What's up? What's up? What's up? And we're starting this thing with Static Medicine Podcast.
All right, what up, everybody? Hey, so today I have somebody with me. As you can tell, Marques is not here. He's actually in the field right now shooting, so he's doing what he does. But we have something else we want to bring to your attention. So with me today, I have Jay, and both Marques and I both know him, military styles like that. And also, what we really want our topic, he's going over a lot of things, but especially is the idea that if you're an entrepreneur, that's the only way you can make money, right? So if you're a W-2 employee, Jay's here to tell you, you can never make money. Wealth is not an option, right? You must stick to doing your 9 to 5 and you're hopeless, right? Like that. But actually, that's really not the truth. What we really want to do cover today is, hey man, if you're a W-2 employee, you can still make wealth. The idea of the highest idea that if you're an entrepreneur, if you're out here slaving, doing those things, that's the only way you can be wealthy. We really want to talk about actually Jay's story right now of, hey, that's the complete opposite.
Hey, so what up, y'all? So like you said, Jay, I go by Jay. Name's Jeremy Wilson. And I am currently living in San Antonio, military, active duty, been military for about 19 years. Wife, kid, stepkid, kid mine as well. So two in the house. And I'm ready for the discussion, whatever we want to talk about. But I'm pretty much an open book.
Bet, man. Like I said, one of the things that I think is going around a lot of times is we're always sitting there saying like, hey, you got to be this entrepreneur, right? You have entrepreneurs like Gary Vee, you have Patrick Bet-David, like these ideas, and he's been changing his tune a little bit about that. But they get this idea you got to be an entrepreneur, right? That's a big thing now. I think in today's society, it's almost be like, hey man, I got a company, I'm an entrepreneur, and it's like that tag. It's the hot thing right now. But if you're an entrepreneur, man, you're working like 60, 70, 80 hours, and you might be making 20, 30 grand. You're not making the life, right?
Sorry to cut you off, but I love it on that point. And then I would add on to your point and say that we also look at other people, what they're being successful at, and then saying, okay, well, that's what I have to do to be successful because it's somebody that's close to me and they're successful in doing it. So entrepreneur or business has been interesting to say the least, and especially in today's culture, it's crazy to think of like what people are good at. They don't necessarily look at what they're good at and be like, oh, I can make money doing this. They look at what other people are doing that's close to them, and then it's a fallacy of like, oh, well, I know what you can do, so I can be successful in that too. So, I think both lanes can be played simultaneously, in my honest opinion. I think you could be a W-2 and be successful. I think that I think everybody can agree multiple streams of income is the most beneficial because whether or not you're in business, because right now, me being in business, I use a lot of my W-2 income to supplement when I need for whatever's going on in business. So there's good months, there's bad months, but I keep the W-2 money rolling so that way it sustains the business for those not so good months.
So with you being a W-2 employee, right? So we're just going to, and the reason why I keep saying W-2 is because a lot of times it's a misconception. Like, hey, your regular job. What are you doing on the side though? That's something different that maybe you didn't think about before.
First, I'll start what I do. So I'm in logistics or trucking, specifically over the road, and even more specifically, we run a reefer. So we do dry loads and reefer, so van loads or whatever. What do I do differently? I think the only thing I could say that I do differently as it relates to business was I had went, and this could be a crazy part of it. I had went and it was time to get a new truck. And I went to, I just felt like it was a time coming up on 20 years in the military. And I'm like, I want to buy a truck. Everybody wants a new truck before they quote unquote retire after doing 20 years in the military. And I submitted a loan online, instantly got approved for $80,000 to go buy this, not a semi, but a regular truck, 1,500. No, I think it was 2,500 Ram at the time. And instantly got approved, went to the dealership. They luckily didn't have the truck. They didn't have it. It was just listed on the website. And then I said, okay, well, this truck ain't gonna make me no money though. Like it's gonna sit in my driveway. The car payment there, I had already listed the car payment, what the car payment was gonna be. And I was sitting back thinking like, well, instead of when I'm transitioning, instead of buying something else that I have to pay off, why don't I try something that's a little different? Why don't I try something? If I get approved for 80,000 just for a regular truck, why don't I try to get a semi truck and have it make money for me, because I don't really need a truck. It's just something that we do, I guess. I say we do. I was thinking about doing in the military, not to label anybody else, of like, hey, I want to buy me a present for doing 20 years of service. So fast forward, I did get the semi truck. Business loans is a lot different than personal. So that was just intriguing going through. Got the truck, got a trailer, and then been rolling ever since, and haven't looked back. And I say this, I'm sorry for rambling on this point, but I say that the craziest part about when you start business too is how fast your mind switches to, well, how can I make more money? Like, and then you just start looking for different lanes and stuff within whatever you're doing to be, okay, well, how can I generate more income to grow this business even faster? So, using that same stuff, using my credit score, using my, my history of employment and all that stuff. And instead of, which a term that's getting used a lot is, instead of buying liabilities, try to buy assets and then see where it goes. So.
And so now that you're in the logistic business now for your actual other portion, so that means that your job in the military is logistics, right?
Civil engineer by trade. So I do construction. So we dabble in logistics. And when I say dabble, I feel pretty proficient because I feel like some lanes translate each other. But I don't have a supply like logistics background. I have a construction background, specifically vertical construction. And then now we do like project management. The thing that kind of led me to trucking, that's what everybody refers to it, led me to trucking was the fact that I had family involved with trucking. So, and if there was a point that I would like to make is sometimes like the people closest to you will tell you like, hey, this is the lane you should be in without even telling you. And I looked around my family and people that's close to me, and so many people were in the trucking world, but they weren't on the business side. They were on the driver's side or the mechanic side or whatever, but not necessarily on the business side of it. So, but that's where I felt very comfortable at, was on the business side. So having that support system with family and being able to bounce stuff off of them, even as it went to like buying a truck or buying a trailer and what should I look at, and the driver ended up being my brother, everything. But as far as my background, no, I didn't grow up in trucking. Again, 19 years in construction turned into project management. So no, not necessarily that. It just felt right. The wife's in contracting, and like everybody around like had something to do that could have contributed to trucking being a profitable thing for me. So that's why I went with it. So it wasn't necessarily something that I had a background with.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. And the reason why I bring that up is, both Marques, you and myself all have a CE background within civil engineers for the Air Force. The reason why I bring that up is, a lot of people think like, oh, hey, I'm doing this, I am a data entry for what? I could never have another business because it had to be data entry. And what I like to highlight is the ability that for you, it's like, that's not true. You actually went a whole different route. And also what I really like what you said was, we get used to people telling us, hey, stay in your lane. And that's like a negative, right? We look down upon that. But that idea of sitting there saying like, hey, man, I actually have a lot of people around me that can help me get into another lane specifically. But, it's like, because there's such a learning curve.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like you were saying, like the trailer doing this stuff. But if you can look around you and I have all this
everybody,
experience.
it's the same thing. I have the same story as everybody else. Everybody told me not to do it. It's not the right time. Similar to like what y'all talking about with investing, is you're talking about business in general. It's never the right time. It's never the hottest market. It's never, hold off a couple more months, hold off. Well, historically, whatever, man. But I really felt like I had a support system around me that was like, I had the business side. So numbers and stuff, I love numbers. But it was all the small stuff that went in there, even maintenance on the truck, like, learning how many miles can a truck go without an oil change or whatever. And then how much is an oil change going into it? I had people connected to me that I could just ask that easy question and be like, oh yeah, this is what it is. Cause that was that day to day. But no, it's definitely like, look around your circle, look around your people, and and then just go for it, just shoot.
So now you've done this, but before you do that, right? Like, this is your first business. You have really, you can look online, but that moment you're filing that LLC, the moment you're doing those things, like you said, it does change you. Going to that portion of that stuff, what made you start when you were talking about what are some things that you learned from actually, like the business loans or that business process?
Take a step
what are some
back
things you learned from there?
Because realizing one thing that you said. So actually, this is my second business. My first business that I wanted to try out was apparel making, and I did that 2014. I went into it and I wanted to do direct to garment printing. So you can do low volume but high prices, high profit margins and everything, and failed. And reason being was because at the time I was chasing kind of a trend, and then I was like, oh well, I have the money to do this, and I have the but I didn't have the same desire to do it. I didn't have there's not an art bone in my body, right? I can't draw. I can look at something and see if it's right, but like the graphics, just everything. I have no artistic mind at all. But I just felt like it was an easy lane. I felt like I can do the work, and then I felt like I can do this business, and then it failed because literally nobody around me had did apparel work. I was not artistic at all. It was not a fit for me, and then it failed. So just that quick plug on that one. I just want to be honest with everybody. It ain't the first venture, but and that was all personal too. So going back to your question as far as like with business loans versus personal loans, all that was personal income or trying to pursue a loan or whatever. Now on this time with business loans, the thing that they don't tell you is they could care less about your personal score. And it's not to highlight anything, but I was pushing an 800 credit score. I didn't quite get to 800, but I was pushing 800 credit score. Again, 19 years of credit history, cards that old, everything, balance is low. I have revolving credit of, six-figure numbers or whatever. And I probably got the worst loan that I have signed since I was 17 years old on my first truck and trailer, by far. If I showed anybody the documents, they would be like, why would you sign those? Those are so terrible, blah, blah, blah. And the thing that they don't tell you about business is that's your start date, your EIN, and that is your business start date. So you have to approach it the same exact way. We've all signed a terrible car loan at 18 years old. Like, it compared to what we're able to sign now, so kind of the same difference when you go into business. It might not be the best deal going out the gate. Of course, you don't put yourself in any hardships or whatever. So, but it was not the best deal going out the gate. The process was very simple after making a few phone calls about getting pre-approved or whatever. But I remember the first couple of numbers that came back. I remember calling Q, matter of fact, and then I was like, "Hey, man, they trying to play me. They trying to give me these numbers, and they think I'm some young dude that don't know the difference and what interest rate me." And I had a lot of conversations with some close people, and that's a side of business that we don't necessarily talk about. Is like everybody starts off exactly. When I say everybody, majority, right? You will have those anomalies that come out the gate, and they just come across something and win big or whatever. But majority of people that want to do something, it's not going to be the best deal going out the gate. And that goes with real estate. That goes with investing. Like we talk options sometimes. We talk long-term investing. Like it just is what it is. But if you want to start, you got to start.
Yeah. And I will actually speak to like when you're talking about does it look right or not? Like, so again, we're on a group chat. And so when Marques has something, you'll be like really quick to do it. And it's like, damn, it's like, I mean, those are it. But, and I think it's good to talk about like, hey man, I tried this and it failed. I tried, I think when I got out of the military, 2013, 14, we tried to open up a tattoo shop, and we're talking about like fireworks of like fire, just spectacular failure. Like it was like, man, it was horrible. Damn. Before it even got off the ground, it just failed. But again, those things are great because, everyone points this picture of like, hey man, I'm going to start a business. It's going to be right. Like, man, that's your second, could be your third one. And you're learning these things over here, and you're always thinking your own personal money every time you're doing it. So it's like, and that's what I learned, from ours. We're trying to do a tattoo shop, failed before we got that one. And I have I have my own clothing company doing those of what you're talking about. And one thing that's kind of helped me, I've had the same dilemma sometimes where you're looking at doing different things, and it's like, man, do I even care? And I think that's a lot of things that we're always looking at the money. Like, hey man, am I going to make $1 million? What's my ROI? Right. But sometimes it comes down to like, hey man, do you even like doing this stuff? Do you have a passion? Or kind of like what you're saying, do I even know people around me? Because if someone's like, dude, man, I can make a lot of money doing trucking, you're like, great. And you look around and be like, how much do tires cost? Like, I don't know that, but I'm pretty sure it's expensive. Especially when you're just traveling nonstop. I mean, if you travel anywhere, you start seeing it on the road. I feel like that dude was not expecting that.
I just bought 2 tires yesterday. It was $1,000. And that's without mounting and, the service that came along with it. Plus the truck is down. So there's a logistics part to it. So the driver was sitting there for like 4 hours waiting to get the tires changed. And it was just a random, woke up in the morning and then there was a big split on the side, like it dry rotted or something. So, it's, man, I was like, dang, he's speaking to my soul. This literally happened. The last repair that I had happened yesterday with some tires. But yeah, man, speak on it. It's definitely something that you don't want to look at somebody else and just say, hey, I see you're successful, or I think you're successful. And that's the other misconception as well. Like, how accessible we are as far as with social media. You can portray an image of successful and be in the red the entire time. And a lot of people look at that and they'll be like, oh, well, I see you posting pictures or you're doing stuff. And like, I know you rich because you do podcasts and stuff. Right. And then, so
got a Lamborghini outside.
So it can kind of seem that way until people start deep diving into it. So, and then another point that you made to drive it home. Yeah. A lot of people is the second, third, fourth, business or whatever, until they can find out what they're really passionate about. Hell, there's been so many ideas and stuff floating around. I think the biggest thing that failed when I was doing the apparel, because I had no passion behind it, is I never narrowed down on anything. Like, I didn't say, hey, I do this. It was literally whatever somebody brought me and was like, can you do this? I said, yeah, because I knew I can figure out how to do it. And I did figure out how to do it, but I never narrowed anything down. I was never known for producing a certain product or doing something really well. It was just like, if you brought me leggings and you wanted something printed on it, I was going to print it. I was going to figure out how to, if you wanted a hat, I was going to, figure it out. And this is when you're trying to start off business, and that's the worst business plan ever, is literally just do everything. And, outside of that passion side, that was probably the biggest one.
Well, it's crazy because people literally people think, man, if I can do everything, I can get like some business, right? Like, that's what we think about it. But if you're on an e-commerce site, it's your conversion rate for like to be successful is 1% to 2%. So if you get 1 million people to look at your website, about 1% to 2%, if you're lucky, are going to like check out. So that's the thing about e-commerce sites. So that's why, like, you're looking at it and like, cause I looked at my conversion rate, I was like, that's horrible. And then I'm starting to read more books, like understanding the industry. And you're like, man, okay, we got some improvement to make, but we're not that far off. But at the same time frame, again, like you're not seeing, like if you have an apparel company and you're going to your website, you're not seeing how many people have been to your site or how many people just go to your site and never check out, how many people check out or put a cart and they never check out. Like, those things are, part of those things that we never talk about, but I can always show you the new product highlight and you'd be like, dude, you're killing it because you're just doing this. Like, no, I mean, you're not seeing the bills, you're not seeing the credit card statements, and I think that's very important because we're, with social media now, we're always highlighting our successes, but, I'm not going to show you my credit card statement and be like, here's a red statement, or like, sometimes we talk about like, how you, hey, red, here's this, what does that mean? Or, even the crazier part is you have an idea, you spend time working on it, and then you launch regardless of what you're doing, and then nothing happens. And you're just like, like, Yeah, it's like, yeah, I think that's crazy, man. I think that's those are things that need to be talked about. But what I do like the idea is that, hey, man, just because you're a W-2 employee doesn't mean
Yeah.
you can't experience the other side of things. And so now that you have your trucking company, what are some of the things that you're looking at? Like, okay, you're about to retire from the military. If you're doing the 20, is there anything
Yeah.
you're looking at beyond that?
I'm hoping to stay in project management or program management. Um, I have no, and it's the other fallacy, right? Like I have no desire to drive a truck. Like I can drive a truck, just based on being on military and everything. I actually do have my CDL as well, and but I have no desire to go over the road and drive a truck. But I think I would be really good at running that business if it did balloon to the point where it needed me there full time, because I do have those intangible skills that relate to the business side of trucking, because there is a lot of relationships. You talk about shippers and whatever, but ideally, I just want to continue. I guess I want to say I want to continue to keep learning. It's in the military, um, we say that we're learning every year, but it's kind of like, um, the best way to say it, it's almost like a rinse and repeat. Like you can learn something new, but it's learning a new version. Like I have my books back here, and they talk about leadership. They talk about mindsets and different ways to think about things. But it's just different perspectives, because you keep trying to learn different perspectives as you get introduced to new people, to try to relate to more and more people. But if you're learning leadership, you're learning leadership. If you're learning management, you're learning management. If you're learning money, you're learning money. However you learn it, whoever is saying it, you're still learning the same thing. So my goal was probably going to be something completely different. If I do have program management, because that's an easy transition for me, then so be it. Something comes about. Um, but then I'm also open to learn something. Sales has been on my mind. So because I love talking to people, I'm easy to talk to, whatever. So I thought about sales depending on what the company is and, what they're trying to do. But because there's a lot of solution companies out there that are intriguing now. So, they go into an environment or a situation and figure out different solutions. And I love my brain spinning like that, looking at a blank space. They're telling me they have a problem, and I'm like, okay, let me see how I can help you. Whatever your storage problem, your excess waste problem, your, whatever. And then that kind of dives into the sales portion of it. So, my goal would obviously be continue to build business. The dream is not to have, a small trucking fleet. It'd be as large as possible, wherever it takes me. But then also open up things around there. So land is in the option, because I love trucking spaces because that's one of the hurdles too that people don't talk about as well in trucking. Is like, well, where are you going to park this thing when it's not driving? But land, I'm in Texas right now, so land is able to come by, but just depending on the location, there might be a small maintenance shop that goes along with it. Like it's kind of, we're going to see how the next year plays out. So I've been doing trucking for about a year, and then in the next year when I hit 20, that'll be a couple of years. That'll be a good time for me to find out what direction I want to take everything. So but that's also not eliminating a lot of other stuff. Franchising is out there, real estate, whatever, that multiple streams. Because the construction background really intrigues me to get into real estate. So when you're talking your flips, or you're talking, anything that's involved in project management, like I'm pretty good at, like that's second nature to me. So, yeah, I'm kind of wide open at this point. Like even my answer is super sporadic for a reason, because, like there's options out there, and I feel but that's a blessing to have, right? To feel like you have options available.
Yeah, I think that's, one of the things that you said I really want to like touch base on is the idea that you have a skill from another job that's transferable, right? So I think a lot of people, we don't think about that sometimes. Like, hey, man, I'm doing this over here. How does it translate over here? Or, man, I didn't know doing these things, right? So, some of my stuff from my IT background has transferred over because I'm able to learn education. I'm able to like teach myself stuff. I'm able to, those are different skill sets, and I'm able to think differently. And I can bring that into it. And when it goes to sales, man, a lot of things that people don't talk about sales either is like, you got to like, there's tried true methods. And one of them that people don't really talk about is scripting. So what that is like, and we do it in real estate every week. We at least spend 1 hour, at least minimum, of okay, let's have a scenario situation. We're going to talk through it. And what happens is someone's going to say, "Hey, I don't want this." Okay, cool. You in sales, you can't sit there and say like, "No, I'm not doing this." Okay, well, thank you. Have a good day. No, it has to sit there and say like, "No, I don't want to buy a home right now because of this." Cool. Let me solve that problem for you. Cool. You got anything else? And we just keep on going hammer at people so they can do that. And what you find out is that the more you're understanding what people are saying, the more their objections they're going to have. That's what it is. But most of the time we're practicing on, we're not, before we even talk to people, we're practicing before the whole time of like, what am I going to say to you? What are we going to do to this? Interest rates, etc. Hey, I can't find a home. We have plenty of stuff where we actually talk about it. And then we critique ourselves. Okay, here's this. I would say this probably. Hey, man, watch your tone on this one. You said this one. You kind of said that. It doesn't sound very safely. The shift in your voice,
that's really cool.
It's like everything, right? There's a whole nother level to it. And when it goes into sales, that's something too, is like, man, it's like being able to talk to people is natural. But when you're sitting there saying, I'm here to talk about it, but I know you're going to have this problem. Do I already have the answer? Or if I'm not even ready for, or whatever I can't do this for this. My goal is to just keep, knocking that down until you sit there and say like, okay, okay. Well, that's all I have. I tell
the team all the time, even in my job right now, and same thing with trucking, like there's always yes. Like the answer can, anytime we get in a conversation, the answer can always be yes. But what comes with yes? And then is each side willing to, whatever, like, just like we were talking about loans, like you can always get a loan. People be like, oh, I'm not approved for a loan. I don't care what your credit score is. You can always get a loan. Now, what comes with when you get that loan, that's a whole different conversation. So the same thing with sales, same thing with real estate, like what you were just saying, there's always yes, like how we get to yes. And then we may get to a point where we can't, like once you figure out what gets you yes, you're like, oh, that's a boundary or a line that I can't cross. Then okay, then we figured out how to get to yes. The problem is a lot of times people don't want to even figure out how do I get to yes. And I think we're losing some things sometimes when we go down that route. It's like, hey, no, let's figure out how to get to yes. That may be the line that get crossed, which is cool. Okay, now we know. But a lot of times they'll just stop it, be like, oh, well, no, because I don't know what yes is, So, but there's always a yes.
Well, I mean, also speaking about what you're saying, like, you talked about earlier, like learning. That's a lot of things too. Like, it don't matter if you want to be an investor. It don't matter if you want to be an entrepreneur. It don't matter if you want to be a business owner. It don't matter if you want to start your own service side business or whatever it is. Like, if you listen to Robert Kiyosaki's for like his quadrants, right? Like those 4 quadrants. At any point though, no matter what, you need to keep learning. And I think once you keep learning nonstop, once you start having this idea of like a thirst for knowledge, man, like you start learning about money. Okay, cool. Learn a little bit about money. And again, maybe you don't start your own business, but you can still invest. You could go index funds, mutual funds. You go into dividend stocks, you can go to, there's so many different things within this little realm you could do. And when it comes to real estate, again, there's land. I know people that have construction backgrounds. What they'll do is they'll buy land. They'll actually put like different things on it, like a pad or some kind of thing on it because they have a construction background or they have that company and they resell that land. They almost flip land in a sense. Same things for, like investors. Like some people will buy and hold, like they'll buy a house for like 20 grand, fix it up and then buy and hold it. Some will flip it. There's always a different thing. And what I love about things is like, there's not one way to win. And if you talk to 10 different people, there's 10 different ways that they found a way to succeed. And I think that's the goal that we're going for. Hopefully, I think everyone's kind of noticing like, hey, man, like I can try to be this guy who's, doing all this stuff, but that's his goal. That's his life. That's his passion. And that's why he's killing it. I'm over here sucking at it because I'm just following, like you said earlier, I'm just following the latest trend. And, I think like what's amazing about people is like, have you ever heard of like the blue ocean theory? Like, when you niche down, you have like the blue ocean. So it comes down like in business where if you have this idea, like kind of like what you're saying. So like for me, like my clothing is for veterans. Well, so if you start going down to it, it's just strictly just for this portion. We're only advertising to one type of demographic. But once you niche down so much, there's the whole ocean's open for you because there's just so much possibilities because you're just in one little area. And I think that's possible for a lot of people, like kind of like we were saying, hey man, I tried this, I tried the latest trend, but it's like, honestly, man, if you just stick to one thing, be the best you can be at that one thing, you'll be amazed. And so that's kind of changed my perspective a little bit, where I
Yeah.
was looking at like 7 different streams of income. And now I'm like, okay, clothing companies is my number one priority in life. Because I've been doing investing for stocks for a while. We're going to stocks. And then because I'm in real estate, I don't have to put as
Right.
much effort in real estate because I do that every
Yeah.
day. So those are my 3 things. And I'm 100% focused on that. If someone's like, "Hey, man, how about a business?"
And
in this?
that's the fallacy of multi-stream income is that the intent is to be vastly different fields, and that's not the case at all. So the same thing like I mentioned with trucking. So I'm looking at multiple streams of income, but within trucking. So I thought about writing a book. So the hardest thing for me was consolidating, excuse me, all of the information that's online, right? So like trucking, everything's online. Everything's always online. It's just about knowing what questions that you have to ask and then where to get the information. But it's not consolidated into one, thing. Now they do make books and they'll say, hey, how to start a trucking business or whatever. But that's just one perspective of a situation. And it's such a brushstroke. So
Right.
I thought about doing a book where terminology, initial cost range, whatever, literally the stuff that I'm going through right now. I would just write it down. I talked about training. So there's dispatching that's in there or whatever. So multiple lanes, but within my current lane, so the idea isn't to hey, I am going to go back into apparel because I'm making money with trucking, right? That's just 2 different lanes, and like you
Right.
need different equipment, your energy, your focus is split and everything. So you can definitely do multiple streams. Just like you said, Q is out doing some video work right now, but it's within his lane. He's not saying, hey, I'm going to do video work for I don't know, whoever, like just random. No, it's within the fitness lane. So it's but it begets multiple streams of income, right? So I just harping on your point there, which you was just making.
Like I said, I think that's something that we always got to talk about, because every time someone's like, "Hey, I have multiple streams of income," somebody's like, "Do you got like are you like hustling cotton candies? Are you doing vending machines? Are you doing it like?" Because there are people like that, right? Like they are hustling so many different avenues. But if you talk to people and sit there and saying like, "Hey, I'm doing trucking," okay, cool. And then like you mentioned, I want to write a book, and people are like, well, like that, like actually, you go to Fiverr, you know what I mean, or go to Upwork. You can hire a publisher, you can hire a ghostwriter, you can hire these people to do it for you, and you just talk. And then now you have a book, right? And people are like, well, that could be difficult. You write to an ebook, and you don't even need a public, like you don't even need to go through anyone. You can self-publish. I mean, there's so many different ways of doing, like ways where, again, like you're saying, you're sticking to your lane. Now, one thing that I like about some of those things is sometimes you can sit there and say like, hey, I want to write a book, and you're like, but I don't have time to write. Man, some of those times you just outsource that stuff, and that still keeps your what you want to do, and you're still staying in your lane the 100%, because unless you have a degree in like that, or you love writing, which is another thing I think we could talk about, where if you love to do something, you can combine both your passions if it works. Now, when we're going to this stuff, right, and you're talking about these things, and you've had this experience, what are some of the top things you think that, man, like you wish you would have known ahead of time, or that you knew and you're like, man, if I could talk to anyone about starting a business, these are some of the top things I would say.
I'm gonna start it off with I wish, because this one hurt me the most, was I wish, and it's on subject. I'm sorry, it's on subject, but it's not the answer. I think when people want to hear like how do you submit for EIN or how to whatever, right? Was I wish somebody would have prepared me for the people that you're going to lose when you start business, and it's be some of the people that's closest to you. Because the first thing you do when you do something new, that's just like with anything else. So I was into sports when I was younger, and, I did good in sports. So I'd want to call, whoever, my dad, and be like, hey, dad, I scored these many points in the game or whatever. And they'd be happy for you because, you scored that many points in the game. But when you get into business, what I've seen, and this is the trend now, I've only had 2, right? But both times was exactly the same, was everybody, you're like, man, I'm thinking about this. They're like, oh, that's cool. I'd buy your shirt, whatever, right? I'm gonna go back to the thing. I'll buy your shirt. It's all good. And then you'd be like, oh, well, and you go through the phases, right? Like you're talking about it, and then you start buying equipment. or you start, you apply for your EIN, or you build a website, or you do your design or whatever, right? And then the people are like, oh, and then the comments start changing. Oh, are you sure? Like, is this something you really feel like you got time for? Or, you're not going to overwhelm yourself or whatever. And then you actually start it. Then it's, oh man, that ain't really my style. Or again, I'm still sticking on the lane of apparel. I really on my style, whatever. Hey, you should really do this better, or you should have done that. I don't like this. Yeah, I think you're just overwhelming yourself right now. Just everything in general, right? The negative comments. It's just a roller coaster.
Yeah.
But my number one thing by far, because there were some people that was really close to me that I was like, I wanted to call immediately. I bought my truck, like this is happening or whatever. And I mean, just tough, to not get the response that you would think you want, whether or not it was from family or from close friends, was that was probably the most difficult thing for me, because I felt like I was doing it for the right reasons. Even with me starting trucking, like again, I had a lot of family to do up in there as well, and what the money wasn't the intentional side. Like I didn't think the first month I was going to be able to just quit everything and we was going to all ball out or whatever, right? It was a passion, right. Something I wanted to do, and something I wanted to get introduced to, so I did it. But some of the responses and stuff I got from people that was really close to me was just, it hurt, man. I ain't gonna lie, it hurt. Because you're trying to do better, you're trying to do, and then some of the people too you want to give praise to, because you felt like they set you up to have this mindset to go in this direction. So you're giving them their flowers, but then in the same respect, they're reciprocating with negativity or whatever. So it makes it difficult, man. Yeah, it makes it difficult.
It does. You know what's crazy is like that shit, man. That's the realest shit in the world right there. Like you'll be telling people, but it's like people that are not doing shit, man, they hate. But people that are doing either what you're doing or doing better than you, they never whatsoever. Yeah. They're like, man, good.
They
good
have no
shit,
clue
man.
what
Dope.
you're doing
Amazing.
or anything, but they just know that you're doing something, and they're like, yo, that's fire. Whatever, right. That's fire.
Yeah. Yeah, and like Marques and I mentioned numerous times with Nick when he was like, "Hey, I'm doing crypto mining." It was, man, amazing. No, at all, don't care, do not want to do it, don't want to step into it. Even what you're doing, I'm like, man, bravo, man, that's smart. I don't want to touch that shit, and I think that's what we kind of like. We kind of forget, man. Sometimes the strangers, they're always like, man, they're your biggest cheerleader, but the people that are closest to you, and I've always said that to a lot of people, man. Like a lot of times we hold up a mirror to other people. We hold up that mirror, and so they're seeing themselves, and they don't like that shit, and they're gonna get angry when you're doing something they're not doing. They're not happy that they're not doing that, especially when you're giving someone those flowers. Like, hey, man, thank you so much. You gave me this idea, and I did this and that one. They're mad because they're like, it's like almost like you stole their idea. They kind of feel that way. Like, well, if you could do it, if I could get you to do it, why can't I do it? But they'll never say that and sit there and say, you know what, I'm not waking up at this time. I'm not doing these things.
You can go back to fitness, right? Like there's no magic secret on what it takes to get to where you want to go, right? But it's just a different mindset. It's just a completely different mindset. It's a completely different passion. And that's why you have to have a passion behind it. I get phone calls at 2:00. If the truck is running, if the truck is rolling, I could get a phone call. And it might be an hour phone call. It might be a 4-hour phone call. It might be at 1 a.m. It might be at 12 in the afternoon, whatever. Because you're moving, commodities, $1 million plus inventory that you're moving and you're responsible for till you drop it off. And there's moving parts. It's a vehicle, so it's moving parts. Anything, a tire could blow out, whatever, and then logistics and the next load, etc. So, if you don't have a passion behind it, like you don't want to stay on the phone for an hour, just as they're getting a record to come by to pull out, or if you have a blown tire, you got to call roadside or whatever, and you're like, oh, I can't do these 2 in the morning phone calls or whatever. Then it's not for you, And the same thing. Easiest example for me is fitness. Easiest example is because you make time for what you want to make time for. Everybody be like, oh, I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to do it. Okay. What did you have time to do today? And then when you start really breaking it down, you're like, oh, you had time to do this, but you didn't have time to do this. That means you ain't really want to do it then. So and my easy one, I always reference people when they be like, how do you have time to do this? Because I still get up, go to the gym in the morning, regardless if I get a 2 o'clock in the morning phone call or not. I have bedtime. I get up, I go to the gym, whatever. Oh man, how do you have W-2? How do you have business and you still make time for the gym? And I'm like, yeah, because I make time for the gym. It might be some other thing. Like I'm not caught up on all the TV shows and stuff. People be asking me like, hey man, you ain't watched this yet?
Yeah.
This movie came out like a month ago or whatever. I'm like, nah, I came home, I was tired. It took me a little cat nap, and then and then I get up and then I'm probably doing something else with the truck. Like I'm looking at the load board, trying to find the next load. Maybe it's something with the website, maybe it's something with purchases, something, maybe it's something maintenance thing or whatever. But when I tell you, when you find that thing though, that you're passionate behind, like it don't even fit. When I'm looking up stuff for the truck, oh man, I just, I get a phone call and stuff like, hey, what's happening? Blah, blah, blah. Cause now I'm learning something new, sometimes it's some BS, but then I'm learning every time it's a phone call, every time it's a load, I got to talk to a new broker. I got to talk to whatever. Like I'm learning, man. It's like I'm rejuvenated as far as doing something different too.
Well, shit, man. Thanks, man. As we wrap this up, man, what I would like to ask you, again, you talked about a lot of things. I like the idea that it went from like, hey, I'm W-2, and a lot of it is mindset, man. You'd be surprised if you can just put yourself in a different space, put yourself with a different circle. It don't matter if you're working at Target. You can find some way if you need to save enough money. You can be an investor. You can have your own business. You can do different things. It's not the one where you got to go into debt $1 million. You don't have to just quit your job. You can still do things. But, one thing to highlight what you said is you're going to be tired, though. Like Marques said, like a couple episodes ago, you might get 4 or 5 hours of sleep for the next couple of years. And if you're okay with that, if you're willing to take that responsibility, knowing that you still got to work out in the morning, knowing you still got to do your duties, whatever, hey, man, you're good. So as the last thing, man, if you can you give us a couple top books? I would say 5, but if you got any top books, either maybe some on leadership, maybe on some mindset, and maybe some things on money, some of the things that help put you in a different perspective,
no doubt.
for where you're at today.
I really wasn't even ready, but the one for sure that the Magic of Thinking Big. I absolutely love that book. I think it takes into perspective. How do I say it? Your dreams are only based on what you think your current ceiling is, right? So, and even when we talk about cars, I'll keep it as short as possible. When we talk about cars, people are like, oh, my dream car is the Hellcat Dodge Charger. And that's because you don't ever think you'll make enough money to get the Lamborghini. The Lamborghini is your dream car, but you don't ever think you're going to make it up. So you say my Hellcat is. So, but Magic of Thinking Big was really good for me. I think mindset books are and the other one, I'm sorry, is, let me just double check. Positive Thinking. Give you a third one, Who Moved My Cheese? Who Moved My Cheese changed my life. It is the shortest read. It is a phenomenal story. It's an older book, but phenomenal story about how to embrace change and what happens with change. Because literally every day change happens. But how are you when change happens? Regardless of how long you've been going through a situation, like how do you adapt to change? And you talk about business. How do you adapt to the market fluctuating in real estate? How do you adapt to changing prices and gas prices? Like change is big. But mindset, those would be 3. Who Moved My Cheese, Magic of Thinking Big, and The Power of Positive Thinking would be the 3. Because mindsets is, I think to me, that is the biggest one. Is, even when I go back to the comment I made where we blew the tire. So the tire is blown, got to get to the shop, whatever. My mindset the whole time was, okay, now I'm going to know how much this is going to cost, how long it's going to take, how fast we can get back on the road, how much is this going to put us behind, whatever. You're going to blow a tire. Right. You're driving truck. It's going to happen. My mindset the entire time is positive. I'm like, yo, I'm learning so much. And people be like, yo, how you spend $1,000 and you happy about that? I'm like, man, I learned so much yesterday on how does it work? Like, how fast can you drive the truck if you have a blown tire? Do you just have to pull over on the side of the road? And that's not, you don't. If it's an outside tire, you don't. You control it to the next service station and save yourself a few $1,000s on a tow bill or them changing it on the side of the road. So I learned so much in that aspect, but I think that had to do with mindsets.
Shit. Well, thanks, man. Thank you for coming on. And again, man, thank you for talking about the idea of a W-2. I'm glad we went from, hey, just a W-2 to actually, man, evolve the conversation of mindset. So I'm glad it evolved down to something a little bit more different. And man, thank you for coming on. And we'll definitely, hopefully when Marques gets back in town, we can all sit down and talk,
Man, let me
chew
know.
it up and chop it up and stuff like that. All right, brother.